Welcome back to the channel, guys. We are going to bring you guys some more tips today. Best class setup for the FHR. Now, I did a nuke variant in the past, but this time I'm just going to bring you guys the ultimate slaying FHR class setup that you can possibly get. It's the fastest TTK in IW, so you're going to be taking out enemies like there is no other. So without further ado, guys, let's get into the custom class and show you guys how to build this setup. Alright, so here we got the FHR class setup. Now I'm going to give you guys tips and tricks to do it in both GBs or UMGs or just public matches online multiplayer, because it does vary a little bit differently. There are only certain variants that you can use online for UMGs and GBs, so it's going to change your setup a little bit. And then obviously, you know, if you're playing search and destroy in competitive matches online, you're going to change up your style a little bit. You're not going to use scavenger because search and destroy matches are obviously so short, you don't need that scavenger perk. So let's dive right into the FHR class and look at how I have it set up. Now, this first build is going to be for your competitive GBs or UMG. I'll show you the adjustments to make for the public matches online as we go through. So obviously for GBs, UMGs, you're not allowed to use variants. So what you want to do is just keep it the standard no variant setup. So that's the FHR that we have selected here. But if we're going to be doing the public match, there really isn't an ideal variant to use for the FHR. They all have their own perks. It all depends on what you want to do and your playstyle. You got to remember that even though we're giving you a best class setup, you have to play according to that setup. So I will tell you how to do that with the FHR because it is drastically different than the ERAD, for example, or obviously your auto assault rifles. So let's take a look at some of the variants. We have the stability perk here on this first counterweight one. It's not as important as some of the other ones, I feel, just because when you have the setup the way I do, it is pinpoint accurate. There is very, very little recoil to it. I've never had to use an extra foregrip, for example, in the case of stability perk. This one here is probably my favorite, the Requisition. This is because it has that increased damage range. As I'll talk about in a little bit of why this gun beats the ERAD is because it plays to that close quarters combat. The only downfall that the FHR has in terms of the ERAD is its damage range. The reason why people always go with the ERAD is because it's the best mid-range to close range gun. The FHR will beat it at close range but not at mid-range. So it has that damage fall off disadvantage. So anytime you can get an extra little bit of damage range on the FHR, it's going to put it even more above that ERAD, bringing it close to that mid-range level as well. So that's why I pick the Requisition. If I'm playing public matches, it has that increased damage range sharpshooter perk, and then obviously head rush perk is just a bonus. Now obviously if you want to go for a nuke, you have to use Havoc, and then the other option that I don't have here is the Windfall. The Windfall has an increased stockpile ammo, which could be useful, but in public matches, if you're going to be using a variant anyways, you're probably going to be running scavenger if you're going for streaks, so stockpile's not as important as long as you have dexterity on and you can reload quick. So the Windfall, that it has that health perk too, which is nice, but in this game when the kill time is so short, it doesn't really make a huge difference in a lot of gun battles. So that's why at the end of the day, if I'm playing public matches, the Requisition is the way to go for the variant. But let's go back to our class. Now, don't use a sight because the sight on the FHR is amazing. As you can see, it's so close to an ELO sight. It's just a little bit smaller, but it has that nice green reticle in the middle, and that's better than a lot of the reticles that you can choose from the custom menu as it is. So don't put a reticle on, or a sight for that matter, but you're going to start with foregrip. Foregrip, like I said, is what's going to make this gun stable as fuck. It's amazing, and it's gonna beat all of those. You're gonna land all your shots in close range when you're fighting an enemy that even has an ERAD, for example. If you land your shots, you beat him 95% of the time. So that being said, we're gonna move on to laser sight. Because you're gonna be playing fast, I'll get into playstyle in just a minute, but because you're gonna be playing super fast, you're not always gonna be aiming down sights to get your kills with this FHR. A lot of times you're gonna be going in and out of your scope to get the kill, and laser sight is going to increase that spread pattern of your bullets when you zoom out of your optics. So that is why laser sight is key for this build and this playstyle. It's going to transition into a lot more kills, and it just helps you with that accuracy when you're hip firing, obviously, as a laser sight would. Now moving on, quick draw. Quick draw, you want to be aiming down sights as much as possible. The only time you want to be hip firing is if the enemy is moving very quickly, wall running or whatnot, and you fly by him and you got to zoom out of your optic. That's the only time you want to be hip firing to get that quick turn radius on your opponent. Make sure you're landing all your shots. But for the matter of that, quick draw is very important because you want to be able to get that gun up really quickly because you're going to be playing fast and take out your opponent before he has a chance to land you know, those 4 or 5 ERAD shots, which will kill you. Last but not least, this rifled barrel is very important. It's because it's going to increase that damage range and it's going to make it actually viable against guns like the ERAD, you know, when you start approaching that mid-range. The big downfall of the FHR, the reason why a lot of people don't use it, is because of that damage fall off, and they just don't have the playstyle that suits the FHR. So the rifled barrel will start bringing it closer to that ERAD range, which is very, very important. Now, moving on to perks. This is for competitive matches that I have it set up right now. Dexterity, very important for reloads. It's gonna not get you killed. If you're on a streak, a lot of times you'll find you'll get killed in certain situations when you're reloading. But as you see in this clip, I get a quick reload here and absolutely turn on this guy. So as you can see, Dexterity comes in handy in so many situations. So you don't have to YY out of a reload and have to do all that tricky stuff. You can actually get a full clip in your gun and absolutely dominate your enemies. So moving on to perk 2, I have momentum here. This is where I'm going to talk about your playstyle. So the playstyle of the FHR, when you're using this, you have to be moving fast. You have to be moving quick around the map, you know, checking all your corners, jumping in the air, checking your corners, staying out of big lanes unless you're approaching them with speed. So if you can fly out from behind a corner and close that gap with that enemy, that is what you want to do, because you want to get inside that damage fall off range of the FHR. If you stay outside of that damage fall off range, you will lose to the ERAD. That's where that ERAD has that advantage in the subclass. So in order for this to have the fastest TTK, you have to be pressing your enemy very hard, get inside that damage fall off range, and not a gun in the game will beat you. Obviously, snipers will if they can get a quick scope, but quick scoping has been taken completely out of the game pretty much with that ADS having to be fully scoped in for the sniper rifle. So if you press them hard enough, it's going to be hard to hit you, and you'll be able to get inside that range and dominate every gun in this game with the FHR. So last but not least, dead silence is important for competitive matches, but not as important for publics. I use it in public sometimes if I'm going to be switching it off. I'm not really worried about somebody hearing me. Public matches, I will use your gung-ho. You can shoot while you're sprinting, and for that fast play style, as I just talked about, that you have to use for this FHR, it's going to come in very, very handy. That's where, so gung-ho for public matches, dead silence for competitives. That being said, for perk 2, if you're playing public matches, I would either run hardline if you're going for score streaks, you want to get those UAVs, you want to get those advanced UAVs, or scavenger. Scavenger is going to allow you to get, you know, those higher score streaks. You will run out of ammo quickly with the FHR. It does shoot very, very fast. But that being said, let's roll into our combat rigs, because there's a few here that you can use. Now obviously you're limited in competitive game modes, but an interesting one to use for the FHR is the Merc man-at-arms class, because it has that increased stockpile of ammunition at the start, which is very key for this build. But if you're not going to use that one, and reactive armor obviously can come in handy if you're pressing very hard with the FHR, but if not, use a synaptic payload. It plays to the style that you want to be playing, that fast-paced style. Use propulsion. You get that movement increases tremendously with this perk, and then rewind comes in very handy. As you've seen in some of my previous videos, you can really turn a double into a triple or a fury with a good rewind. So that's kind of the classes that I would set up for you guys. But all in all, that is the FHR class that I want to bring you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys found out some new tips on a gun that maybe you haven't used in the past, but definitely try it out in the future. And if you play to that playstyle, you will be winning way more gun battles with this setup. So as always, guys, if you enjoyed the video, definitely drop a thumbs up on the video and share it with everybody that you know. That's how we get out there. That's how the channel was growing so fast to 2,000 subscribers. We're almost there, and I want to get back on track with your daily videos like I have been in the past few days, and bringing you guys these tips. So as always, guys, until the next video, stay on the bean. You do you. Live life your way, because that's the way it's meant to be. Cheers to beauties.